thanks to a milder than average October, reductions in gas usage, and an impressive...
Dude, there's not a single person on Earth that despises global warming more. Who is the most green anti-global warming guy in the world right now? It's Vladimir Putin, bro. That guy wants to fuck the West with gas reserves, and it's so hot in Europe that nobody needs fucking gas, bro. Vladimir Putin is Greta Thunberg #2, man.
Strategy, which means that 94% of Europe's gas storage is now filled.
Very nice.
It looks like Europe has more than enough gas to last through this.
I mean, these are actually, this might sound weird, but we're actually planning to do our part and not heat that much, man.
Winter, despite Putin's best efforts. Consequently, European natural gas prices have started to come down from their previous highs. And on Monday, spot market prices actually went negative.
But why? Did you always read this stuff, right? Everything's calming down and shit. But then, dude, when I drive to the local gas station, it's still super expensive.
Traders were literally paying Europeans to take their gas. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at how Europe successfully weaned itself off Russian gas. Europe and Russia have been fighting a sort of energy war in parallel to the war in Ukraine. Pre-invasion, Russia was Europe's single largest gas store.
And that's, man, think about it what you want. Donald Trump was super fucking ahead and right when he said it's ridiculous that Europe, especially Germany, made itself dependent on Russian gas. It's ridiculous, ridiculous, ridiculous. And that's something where Donald Trump was very, very, very correct.
Accounting for between 40 and 50% of the EU's gas imports. Now, most of this came via pipelines, and over the last few months, Russia has been steadily reducing the flow of gas through these pipes, presumably in an attempt to pressure Europe to end its support for Ukraine. Today, Russian gas flows to Europe are down about 75%, and zero gas is flowing through Nord Stream or Yamal Europe, which run into Germany and Central Europe respectively. Now, the Russians have claimed that these disruptions to gas flow are actually caused by technical issues.
Does anyone still trust Russians? Like they're lying more than toxic relationship people, fuckboys, man. And you just can't take them ever seriously again.
Europe in April after Poland and Bulgaria refused to pay in rubles. Russia blamed the reduction in flows via the Ukraine transit system on the war and claimed that Nord Stream disruptions were because sanctions had prevented them from importing a turbine from Canada.
Sure.
As you'd expect, though, no one really bought this. And European heads of state...
Like when this propaganda ministry of Russia writes these kind of news, they know nobody is going to believe that, right? It's like literally
just... accused Russia of weaponizing its energy exports. And Russian state media basically admitted as much. In a video shared by Russia's embassy in Spain...
They lied to themselves. I speak Russian, and like 20 people said to me that Russia never started any wars and they're just defending themselves. To me, I'm not an expert, but to me the problem seems to be that Russia is just so massively manipulated, right? After decades of communism and then Vladimir Putin, the root of manipulation and propaganda and fake news in Russia is so unbelievably deep that it's gonna take generations to make Russians open-minded again, to make them educated again, to make them realize the truth again, man. It's not the Russians' fault, man. They're just literally born in a society that just is all about lying and fake news and propaganda.
This is Russia. Beautiful women, cheap gas, fertile soil, cheap taxi and delivery, Christianity, no cancel culture, vodka, economy that can withstand thousands of sanctions. Time to move to Russia.
While Gazprom themselves released a video apparently suggesting that Europe will freeze over winter without Russian gas.
Is that real shit?
Anyway, unfortunately for Gazprom, things haven't quite panned out like that.
Yeah, fuck you, Gazprom.
As we explained in a previous video, in late July,
Did these football teams that were sponsored by Gazprom actually lay off their sponsorships? Any football club that's still with Gazprom, man, should not be supported, man.
EU passed a new directive requiring every EU country's gas storage to be at least 80% by November 2021. And those countries without domestic gas storage were required to sign so-called solidarity agreements with neighboring states, which often involved buying gas but storing it in another country's reserves in order to guarantee them access to gas in the event of...
Dude, the way the world works with all the memes and how the world is just a joke nowadays, when winter comes, it's going to actually hurt the Russians the most.
Emergency.
Because the Ukrainians are going to get all the equipment,
all of this was in spite of the fact that at the time, European gas prices were at unprecedented highs. When the directive was announced in late June, European gas prices, as measured by the Dutch TTF benchmark, were at about 100 euros per megawatt hour. For context, this is about 6 times what it was back in 2021, when gas prices stabilized at about 15 euros per megawatt hour. And in part driven by European government efforts to meet these storage needs.
As GreenCon, I often hope that this entire problem is helping a little bit with the greenization of the world, aka getting more renewable energies.
Over the next couple of months,
because we kind of realized that all this gas bullshit and the dependence
reaching a peak of about
on others
350 euros in late August. Nonetheless,
but Tommy, here's my opinion about energy.
Despite these sky-high prices,
plants,
it looks like the EU has surpassed
Tommy.
its own target by quite some distance. According to the EU's own data from mid-October, every country has filled its gas reserves to at least 80%. Apart from Latvia and Hungary, who are currently at about 55 and 79%.
55? What the fuck's Latvia doing? And Viktor Orban, we don't have to talk about him, I guess.
While the 4 countries with the largest available storage capacity have filled their reserves to more than 90%.
Refinancing is gambling back in the day.
Europe's gas storage is now 94% full, representing about 1,000 terawatt-hours worth of energy. That number is about 11% higher than the 10-year annual average, which is particularly impressive given that in January, stocks were 23% below average. And Europe was able to achieve this, in part by reducing consumption. For instance, the EU Council recently ratified a voluntary 10% gross power consumption reduction target and a mandatory 5% peak hours reduction target between December 1st and March 31st, on top of a voluntary 15% gas reduction target for this winter and various consumption reduction campaigns introduced by national governments. Accordingly, Europe's total gas use was down 15% in September and is expected to fall yet further. Anyway, these impressive consumption levels, combined with lower gas consumption and the fact that October has been particularly mild this year, have brought down European gas prices.
It hasn't been mild, man. It was fucking hot as fuck. Yesterday, 25 degrees,
Today,
man.
it looks like European gas prices have stabilized at about 100 euros per megawatt hour. But on Monday, hour-ahead prices, i.e. the price for gas delivered in the next hour, briefly went
that Russian
negative.
Gambit failed miserably. Looks
this
like it,
is essentially because there were loads of ships carrying LNG waiting to unload in European ports. But because storage is full at the moment, and there's little demand for gas right now, no one really wanted it. Now, because holding LNG and just floating around in European ports costs money, some of these ships basically offered to pay traders to take their gas, so that they would be able to leave and sail off to somewhere else, hence the negative prices. So, if month-ahead gas prices are down 70% and hour-ahead gas prices are going negative, does this mean that Europe's energy crisis is already over? Has the EU won the energy war against Putin already? Well, no, not quite. Gas prices are still way above their pre-war norms, and while negative prices are a symptom of the success of Europe's gas storage program, they're also a symptom of a shortage of storage. As we mentioned earlier, Europe currently has about 1,000 terawatt-hours worth of gas stored up. And while that might sound like a lot, Europe is expected to consume 600 terawatt-hours in January alone. So more total storage capacity would be welcome in order to take on some of this excess gas. Nonetheless, it does look like a major disaster has been averted. And as things stand, Putin is clearly losing the energy war. However, unfortunately for, well, Europeans and anyone who wants to avoid World War III, Russia has apparently responded to this by escalating. In the last couple of weeks, there's been an unprecedented number of attacks on Europe's infrastructure. For instance, there was the attack on both Nord Stream pipelines early in October, while at the same time, Norway reported drones flying near.
Did Biden blow up? Yeah, I did. Did Biden blow up Nord Stream?
Then, just a few days later, there was an attack on German train infrastructure.
It was the funniest shit in the world, chat. A lot of you people are not from Germany. So there was this day where the entire railway system in North Germany didn't work for one day. And every single German was like, ah, that's normal. That's just the Deutsche Bahn. That is just our good old German rail. Nobody thought it's a sabotage. Everybody thought that is just normal here because they're fucking retarded.
Then a couple of weeks later, both of the underseas cables leading into the Shetland Islands were damaged in the same week.
Man, there's a fucking sabotage squad in North Europe. Fucking destroying all these infrastructures.
And finally, on October 15th, 3 underseas fiber optic cables in southern France were apparently sabotaged. Now,
that has to be the Russians, right? The fucking Russians. I swear to God, my internet is worse lately.
Individually, these events wouldn't be all that suspicious. But
the system's so shit, people thought it's a casual day. I swear to God, man. Most people thought that.
A number of them, all within a week, strongly suggest that they're at least...
Man, what an asshole country Russia is, right? They pressure you, and then they fuck up, and then they escalate even though they fucked up. It's like a little kid is coming and wants to kick you in the balls. And you're like, no, and you slap the kid. But the kid goes crazy. It gets a stick, and it keeps coming at you, and it wants to punch you and spit at you and throw bubblegum at you, and you're just like, bro, can we just stop and just chill? That's what this shit feels like.
Linked. And the most plausible explanation here seems to be...
And then you actually give it a real big slap, and the kid is like, oh, mommy, it's your fault. You did the fucking war.
Lost the first round of the energy war.
And you can't kick it back because you go to jail, aka nuke.
By attacking European energy and technology infrastructure. Now, Europe has upped their defenses around underseas cables in response. This is pretty worrying.
Imagine you join the Navy in Europe like German or Norwegian, and now you have to protect underlying pipelines. Who would have thought, man? You would never have thought that, right?
Stuff.
But that's
not
how
just
war
because if Russia
works,
were to cut off, say, the underseas cables that carry Norwegian gas into mainland Europe...
Especially Norway, one of the main exporters, has to be very mad at this stuff. Like, Norway should be kind of mad at Russia.
Immediately cut 30% of Europe's gas supplies, but also because it could provoke a response from NATO. In January, for example, the head of the UK's armed forces warned that an attack on the UK's undersea infrastructure would be considered an act of war.
Nice, I like the guy.
Presumably merit a military response.
Exactly.
So, while the energy war is going well for Europe right now, if Russia continues to escalate, it could start an entirely new crisis.